Good morning. This is Ron. It is Wednesday, June the 20th. Welcome to Story Time. And thank you very much. Yes, this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, speaking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. Okay, so useful idiots. That's what Lenin referred to a lot of socialists, that there are the people out there that are that really don't know what the hell that they're doing, but they're very useful to the left in helping them to promote their cause, to agitate and to create um, friction so that they can have their revolution and socialist paradise, or actually socialist hell. So then you have the people, the socialists that are down for the struggle, the ones that know what they're doing, know what they're talking about. Useful idiots don't. The useful idiots are left simply because they've been pressured. They've gone along with the program. Okay, people have pressured them into use psychological tools and techniques and pressure to get them to do and act in a lefty kind of way. So that's the vast majority of the people that you're going to run into as a day-to-day street level conservative. Your parents, your kids, your family members, your coworkers, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to be useful idiots. That if you simply stand your ground, you don't need to prove anything to them, but by simply standing your ground and by action, if nothing else, insisting that they prove themselves to you and prove what they have to say to you, you can frustrate the average socialist, the average lefty, frustrate them and leave them either with their mouth hanging open or giving you dirty looks because they don't know what to say. They're expecting that they're going to be able to exercise power over you, use various psychological tricks to bait you into making basic mistakes, like trying to prove a negative. So you got to remember always when you're dealing with the left, you have nothing to prove. The left has always got something to prove here. So that makes things a lot easier. You do have those people, like I said, that are few and far between that are down for the struggle. They know what they're doing, know what they're talking about, but usually those are the people with bachelor's and master's degrees. They usually work in the news departments or as lawyers and or politicians, and we don't generally run into them very often. If you do, and they're just going to be able to drag the conversation out longer. They're not going to be able to. It's not going to make much difference in terms of proving their point. They don't want to prove a point. What they want to do is exercise power, use psychology to manipulate and to bully and intimidate people into going along with their program. So, like I said, you'll find that if you just simply stand your ground, when somebody says, let's say, "Hey, what do you think about Donald Trump's latest tweet?" and you simply say, and you be honest about it. If you didn't know he did a tweet, because I don't keep up with every tweet that Donald Trump does. I follow Donald Trump on Twitter, but I don't keep up with every single tweet. So be honest. You can be honest and say, you know what? I don't know which tweet you're talking about. Which one is it? They explain it, and then you say, gee, I really hadn't thought about this tweet. What should I think about it? Again, you're putting them in the position of proving their point. Because if they want to be rational and they want to be reasonable and they want to prove their point, use evidence and put that evidence together in a logical way to reach a valid conclusion, I'm willing to listen. I'm absolutely willing to listen. And if they can show that I'm wrong about something, fantastic, because I want to learn. Okay, and if I'm wrong, I want to know about it. What I don't want is to be psychologically manipulated, to be psychologically bullied and intimidated. And I don't have to be. I don't have to put up with it. At the very least, I can just very courteously end the conversation. You know what? Get back to me when you feel like having a real conversation. Okay. Bye bye. I'm busy. See you later. You can always do that. In any case, when I come back, it's going to be I've got some juicy stuff from Rush Limbaugh from his show yesterday that I want to comment on. And thank you very much. And this is from the his app from his show. But I was listening to his show yesterday. He said a few things, and I thought, no, I'm going to have to comment on this because it's really kind of stupid. Rush Limbaugh. We went through all of this yesterday. Now, what he's talking about is the big fuss that's being made over children being separated from their parents on the border. We went through all this yesterday. There is even more to say about it today. But, folks, I'm going to be honest with you about something. I'm getting worn out on it. I'm getting worn out on having to deal with these people, determining the premise every week and determining what is news, because all that happens is everybody ends up on the defensive. They lost. They're the losers in this last election. Their voters and their side represent a minority of thinking, and yet they get away with going on the offense with this never ending accusatory journalism against us, Trump, what have you. Okay, again, this is stupid. And it's stupid because, first of all, most of the claims that are being made by the left vis a vis these so called children that are being separated from their parents are arbitrary claims. There was Sarah Sanders was, she introduced and had the Secretary of Homeland Security make a presentation to the news people about what's going on the border, specifically as it relates to children. So one or a couple of the news people got up to ask questions, and instead of asking questions, they started immediately with psychological bullying and intimidation. And one of them asked, "How can you?" Let's see, how do you put it now? How can this not be child abuse? That was his question. And you notice the way it was phrased. Not, is this child abuse? That's a good faith question. But how can this not be? An accusation in the form of a question. What he's trying to do again is to create a debate, but do it in the guise of conducting an interview. Now, the person that was answering this question was stupid about it. They went ahead and attempted to answer the question rather than doing the smart thing, which is to say, "Excuse me, sir, but how is it child abuse?" And put him in the position of having to prove his point. Now, if he can prove his point, he can put the evidence together in a logical way to reach a valid conclusion and show that there is child abuse going on here. Fine, I want to know about it. And I'm willing to say, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. This is child abuse, and it's time we put an end to it. Okay, but believe me, they're not going to do that. He wouldn't do that because he wants to exercise power. He likes the idea of putting people on the defensive, as Rush Limbaugh has noted. But again, if you listen, take time to listen, you can pick up on what they're trying to do, and you can thwart it. You just simply put everything right back in their lap. Number one. Number two is that you got to quit dealing with arbitrary claims. People are making arbitrary claims. You need to say that the claim is arbitrary. You haven't produced any evidence, and as such, I get to ignore it. Have a nice day. Don't try to prove a negative. Don't deal with arbitrary claims, and then you're not going to be tired at the end of the day. Because again, he says, let's see, I'm getting worn out on it. I'm getting worn out on having to deal with these people, determine the premises. Every week he doesn't. They don't. They just don't. Just because something appears in the news doesn't mean it's valid. Doesn't mean that it is worthy of discussion. Okay? And this is why you have to read, and you have to have some knowledge. You have to know and understand what is debate, what constitutes a debate, know the difference between an interview and a debate, where a debate starts. It always starts with the status quo, and then we only are going to try to achieve change if there is a prima facie, an obvious case for change. And the person that wants change has the burden of proof. And if they don't prove it, I don't have to bother with it. I don't have to refute it. I don't have to refute nonsense. I don't have to refute a zero. But that's what Rush Limbaugh does each and every day, over and over. And as worn out as he is on talking about it, I'm worn out listening to it. Wears me out. I turn it on his show and hoping maybe there's going to be something new on today and he's going to be talking about something new. No, usually he goes back over the same things he's been talking about over the past few days. He's going to again wear himself out. And I think you're going to find more as time goes on, unless he changes and gets smart about what he's doing, that he's going to be wearing himself out to the point where he's going to be taking more and more time off, longer vacations, and maybe even to the point where he decides, screw it, I'm going to retire. But he doesn't have to. There's no reason. If you as a conservative, if you're worn out dealing with some socialist, you're doing something wrong. You should not be the one that's worn out. It should be the socialist. They should be the ones that are exhausted, trying to prove themselves because it's their job. Conservatives don't have to prove anything to socialists. The burden of proof is always, always on the socialist. And it's just a matter of being polite. And again, if they ask you about something you hadn't thought about, you just simply say, you know what? Hadn't thought about it. What should I think about this? Now, you think that they're going to tell me, but they're not. They're going to stand there with their mouth open. They're going to give me a dirty look. Most of them, like I said, are useful idiots. They say things, they ask questions simply because they've heard other people ask those questions, because they've been watching The View, and they heard Joy Behar ask the question, and they think, ooh, that sounds powerful. Next time I'm with my conservative buddy, I'm going to hit him with this. And if you simply say, I hadn't thought about it. What should I think? Stop them dead in their tracks. Okay? Because they don't want to convince. They don't want to use logic and reasoning, because that means having to acknowledge reality. And they're loath to acknowledge reality. So, again, so if Rush Limbaugh doesn't want to wear himself out, and Sean Hannity does the same thing, I think to myself, my God, the guy's got to be exhausted at the end of the day, because he tries to refute zeros. They make no point. The classic example for me is racism. If somebody calls you a racist and that's it, then it's an arbitrary claim, and you not only have the right to ignore it, you must ignore it, because if you try to defend yourself against an arbitrary claim, you end up looking like somebody with a guilty conscience. You look like somebody that has something to hide. Okay, so you have to ignore it. Now, if somebody comes up to you and says, you know what, you're a racist because I've got pictures of you at a KKK rally. Now we've got something to talk about, because they produce some kind of, they have allegedly some evidence. So now we can get into a discussion debate about the validity of the evidence. Oh, let me see this picture. It's not me at all. And when was this picture taken? Oh, I wasn't even, and where was it taken? So you can get into the details. I wasn't there. I was thousands of miles away somewhere else. Obviously, this wasn't me. Okay, so then you have something to defend. But just some arbitrary claim that you're a racist, particularly when you won't go along with something. We have a piece of legislation that's pending. Do you support it? No. Oh, well, then you're a racist. No, I'm just not going to allow myself to be intimidated by that. I'm just going to shrug my shoulders and walk away. Another way to do it, if you really want to piss them off, is they say, well, then you must be a racist. You say, I'm still not supporting it. Whatever it is that they want, you tell them no. You just keep saying no. I'm sorry, I'm not going to support that. I'm still not going to support it. And believe you me, you will wind them so tight, their heads will about pop off. And it's the same thing Rush Limbaugh could do, and Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck, et cetera, et cetera. There's no reason for them to wear themselves out. They should be smiling and happy at the end of their broadcast, because 99% of the things that the liberals, the left, wants to talk about is just garbage. It's worthless. It has no intellectual value whatsoever. Okay, so when I come back, I'm going to go ahead. I think I'm going to go ahead and do a little extra here. No, I'm just going to go ahead and go with the New York City cab drivers joke book. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so I'm reading from the New York City cab drivers joke book by Jim Peach. And he is a New York City cab driver, and he's collected a whole bunch of jokes during his career as a cab driver. Washington is suddenly infested with rats. No one can explain why it has happened. But it has quickly become a serious problem. The government officials try everything, but nothing seems to get rid of the rodents. In desperation, the government officials place an ad for anyone knowing of any means to rid the city of this terrible nuisance. One day, a little man in a green suit shows up at the gate of the White House and asks to see the president. He's about to be turned away when he says that he has come in response to the advertisement. He is taken immediately to see Mr. Trump. I can get rid of your rat problem in a number of hours, says the little man in a strange, unfamiliar foreign accent. It will only cost you $500. All right, says the president. That sounds reasonable. You've got the job. The little man then reaches into a sack he is carrying over his shoulder and pulls out a little bright green rat. He puts the rat down on the floor and walks out the door. The rat follows him, and as the man walks through the city, all the rats fall in behind. They come from everywhere, and soon there's a huge horde of rats swarming through the city behind the little man in the green suit and his little green rat. The man walks down to the Potomac, and the little green rat jumps in. All the other rats follow and are instantly drowned in the river, ridding Washington of its rodent problem. President Trump happily goes up to the little man and hands him $500. But the man refuses to take the money. No, no, he says. I have decided that this will just be a favor I have done for the President of the United States. Good day. And with that, he starts to turn and walk away. Just a moment, little fellow, says the President. Yes, replies the man. Trump sidles up to the man and says to him in a low voice, do you, by any chance, have any little green Democrats? And with that, we conclude another episode of Story Time. Thank you very much for joining me, and until next time, have a great day.